Welcome to the Sound Meets Sound podcast. My guest today is Bridget Kleinert, a Los Angeles-based licensed clinical social worker who believes some of life's biggest questions can be explored through the simplest stories. As the creator of picture books for grown-ups, she helps adults rediscover picture books as tools for curiosity, connection, and emotional growth. She's also the author of The Boy and the Moon and loves conversations that leave people seeing both books and themselves a little differently. Okay, welcome Bridget Kleinert to Sound Meets Sound. Bridget is a licensed clinical social worker and is joining me today, obviously, as you can see her here on the video. I'm very excited to talk to Bridget about being a licensed clinical social worker, her picture books for grown-ups project, and many other things. So welcome, Bridget. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to chat with you and have a fun conversation.
Cool, great.
Yeah.
I thank you for being on. I did want to just start with that licensed clinical social worker bit.
It's a mouthful.
Yeah, but I think it's important to get all the words in there so I
Yeah.
understand. And what that training is like, how you came to it. You told me a little bit about your work history, so I would love to hear more about that,
Yeah,
if you
sure.
don't
I'd love
mind.
to talk about it. So, my personal interest in psychology and in people has been as long as I can remember, since I was a little kid. I've been just so curious about everything, but specifically about people, what motivates them. I want to know everyone's story. If I meet someone, I immediately want to know their story, what makes them who they are. That's my favorite thing in the world. So, and I've also always loved writing. And I feel like kind of therapy and writing kind of goes hand in hand because you're interested in people and what makes them who they are. So, when I was thinking about what I wanted to do, I ended up thinking that social work would actually be the best path forward because it doesn't just look at the individual, it looks at the individual within whatever system that they are, wherever they live, and kind of the macro level view of who they are, what made them who they are in terms of where they grew up, their family system, just a much broader view, which I find fascinating and really important when looking at who someone is. So that's why I went into social work. And I went to Columbia in New York City, which was an amazing experience. I love that school. And I actually, when I first started, I thought that I was going to study just the clinical work to do private practice, but I became really interested in nonprofits. So I kind of did more of a macro education at Columbia. But once I left, I ended up getting a job in San Francisco working with chronically homeless veterans. I had never been to San Francisco before, but it was during a period of time where there were no jobs. I think a lot of millennials and anyone really can relate to that. I was living in New York when there was that mass firing of people. They were going to bars and it was crazy. So anyway, so I moved to San Francisco. I worked with chronically homeless veterans in San Francisco. I got to know what homelessness looked like there. And I absolutely loved working with veterans. I loved hearing their stories. I loved hearing what makes them who they are. And then, of course, I wanted a chance to come back home to where I'm from. So I ended up coming to the Los Angeles VA, where I worked for several years with chronically homeless veterans here in Los Angeles. I learned a lot about homelessness in Los Angeles. It was a really intense but amazing experience. I ended up starting and running the first on-site homeless housing, I guess you would say, at a federal property. And so it's still there at the West Los Angeles VA. They turned it into tiny homes, but it was definitely very unique and challenging. But also, I loved getting to know the veterans. So that's kind of a bit of my journey. I ended up going to UCLA Health for 2 years after that, working with primary care and patients who were high utilizers of the emergency room and admissions, doing telehealth. And then I had my second child and I took a little break. And that's kind of what brings me to picture books. But I'll take a breath before I jump into that.
That was excellent. That was a really nice seg there. But yes, I thank you for the pause because I do want to hear a little bit more about this work with veterans and in the homeless scene in San Francisco and LA. I feel like because I'm from Florida
Mm.
and uh,
Yeah, suffice it to say, I'm from Florida. So being homeless in these sort of warmer climates, I feel like is a whole different ballgame than like, say, had you worked with like veterans and the homeless in New York City.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious if you have anything that you wanted to share about like your insights, and was it different between San Francisco and Los Angeles? Like, and yeah, how you interacted with the veterans and how that worked, I think
Yeah.
is really interesting. And your thoughts maybe on why so many veterans are homeless and the
So many good
failures
questions there.
of the system in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. So the difference between the homeless population in San Francisco and Los Angeles, there is a difference. There's a cultural difference. I mean, there's a huge difference just between the two cities of the culture and just how it sort of functions. But obviously, San Francisco is a little bit more liberal. I would say when I was in San Francisco, I was working in the Tenderloin district. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Mhm.
It's a pretty rough area. And I would say the substance use was much more visible and really in your face. And I was shocked. Like, I had never seen anything like that. Just people shooting up with needles while I was walking down the street going to work. So that was really shocking and intimidating to me. I would say it depends on where in Los Angeles you're comparing. So I was working on the west side of Los Angeles. Brentwood area, Santa Monica. I worked in like South Central LA. But all of that is a different beast from Skid Row. I wasn't on Skid Row in downtown LA very often. That is probably much more comparable to what San Francisco felt like. So I would say,
Ah.
yeah, it's pretty intense. San Francisco, I remember specifically a story that horrified me when I was taking, I think they call it the BART, right? The public
Mhm.
transportation,
Yeah.
and the escalator to go down to the BART wasn't working. And I'm like, that's weird. And I found out the reason it wasn't working is because people were defecating into the escalator. So it was like, and it just got jammed with too much poop. And
This
I thought, why though? Like, why do we allow it? Can we not do this? Can we change this? So that was a little frustrating. I would say both Los Angeles and San Francisco, there's a lot of serious mental illness. And I think one of the frustrating parts is that there's a lot of self report, especially in Los Angeles with the homeless count. Professionals will come in and say, "Are you doing drugs?" No. Oh, okay. Are you mentally ill? No. Oh, okay. They write it down, and then that's the statistics that they provide to the public and say, look, people are not mentally ill on the streets. They're not doing drugs. And so I think it's confusing to the
they're
public.
they're just counting
It's
on.
because if you're psychotic, you literally do not have insight into your own psychosis. So
Yeah, and you're not going to admit to any kind of official that you're doing drugs.
why would you?
Yeah, why would you do that? Yeah, yeah, that's been an observation in mine just anecdotally that, yeah, the more serious your mental illness, the more you think everyone
Yes.
else is mentally ill. So,
Yes.
yeah, or at the minimum, you don't think you have an illness. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that is interesting that the statistics are based on self-reporting like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the funding is also based on that. So the money
Ah,
in
right.
Los Angeles, I don't know about how San Francisco works, but in Los Angeles, there's been a lot of debate about how the money is used, a lot of tax dollars collected, and then the money is utilized based on the surveys that they do. And since there are no serious mental illness, there's not a huge report of serious mental illness or substance abuse, then the dollars don't necessarily go that direction, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I hadn't thought about that aspect of it. Yeah. When I think about the state of mental health care and the way that we care for like people who are pretty to the point where they're homeless because of their mental illness, basically,
Yeah.
the fact that we don't, as a country, don't really have a way of dealing with that very well. To
Yeah.
me, is makes me very angry. But
Yeah.
and I can imagine being inside the system, that could be very hard to watch.
It is. Yeah. And I think a lot of people end up burning out because it is hard to watch and sort of watch, especially if you're working on the ground with the individuals and you want change, you want to help them, you want to see them get better and taken care of, but the politics are above your pay grade or above your your power level. So there's only so much that we can do. But at the same time, working with veterans, being on the streets, working with them, going into their homes. I did home visits. It was the most incredible experience. And I'm just so grateful that I got to do it. And it taught me a lot. So, yeah.
Can you expand on, because I being in my, happy little house with my lattes, I can't imagine. I've had social proximity to veterans, but I can't imagine really what that level of PTSD and all of that does. Can you maybe expand on why that was such an enriching or interesting or amazing experience for you, however you
Yeah.
put it?
Yeah. I love lattes too, let me just say. But
Yeah, no, no, yeah. That was a weird way of me putting it.
no, I love it. But yeah, so I think there's a little bit of a misconception when people think about veterans, especially homeless veterans. Um, there are absolutely some homeless veterans and some veterans in general that have been traumatized by their experiences in the military. Definitely. That is real. Um, the veterans that I worked with consistently were more affected by generational poverty and childhood trauma than they were by the military specifically. A lot of the veterans that I worked with who were homeless, a lot of them didn't spend a ton of time in the military. It was, somewhat brief. Maybe there was a medical discharge, but yeah, the majority, I would say, generational poverty is the number one factor that I think led to a lot of their situations, and then trauma as well.
And it's probably what led them to join the military in the first place is, as I understand it, the military kind of targets people who don't have a lot of money and upward mobility, so to speak.
Yes, that's true. I mean, someone that, is motivated to get out of their current situation. And that's really a beautiful thing that they want to, move up and take on responsibility. But yeah, a lot of times it's when there aren't a lot of other options. I did see a lot of Vietnam veterans as well, though, people that were drafted. And it's interesting how each generation of veterans has a completely different culture.
Right.
So
I
there's,
imagine.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, the World War II veterans, I did have the honor of working with a few of them. They were very different from the Vietnam veterans who were different from Operation Desert Storm and the
Mhm.
later veterans. So,
That's interesting. Yeah, I can imagine thinking of my grandfather, who was a World War II veteran, and then my
mm,
uncle, who was a Vietnam veteran. They were very different people, a very different experience of the military also, but
yeah,
mainly because the uncle was drafted and the grandfather wasn't. He joined up voluntarily.
yeah.
Uh, that is very fascinating. Thank you for sharing that. Getting us back onto your timeline into the present day.
Yes, thank you.
Yes. uh, First of all, let me just say I really admire that. Like, it's one thing to say, I mean, that's what I say about my podcast. I love hearing people's stories. It's another thing to go out into I've heard this before about San Francisco, the like poop infested
Oh,
streets of San Francisco to go talk to people. So you're really walking the walk. So
I do have
that's,
to say one quick story about my time in San
yes. Oh,
Francisco. So
yes.
I
Yeah.
was a recent graduate. Obviously, I was young. I was like 23, 24, and I had no experience with that area of life. I had never been in a place like the Tenderloin. So I was doing a home visit. I'm knocking on the door, waiting for them to come, and a guy walks by and he's like, "Hey, are you working?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm working." And he's like, "Well, how much?" And I was like,
Oh,
"Oh, you think I'm a prostitute. I see."
why else would you be there?
I mean, I was dressed,
Oh, yeah.
conservatively. It was like the
Right.
strangest thing. Like, no one has ever mistaken me for a prostitute. So it's a good story, though. And, when I tell my friends, like, years later, they're like, you should have thrown out a number and seen what. No, I'll never
Yeah.
know what the number was, but
Yeah.
doesn't matter.
You're not that interested in people's stories.
No, no. I
Not to
didn't I
that
didn't need that
level.
story. But that was, some of the things that come up when you're out in the field. So, never
Yeah.
boring, never boring.
Right. Yeah. I do see how burnout could happen for people. Yeah, and being 23 and going out into the Tenderloin, and yeah, I'm very have a lot of admiration for that because I would not have been brave enough to do that.
At 40, I would not have been brave enough. I didn't know what I was doing at 23, so
Right.
that helped a lot.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I was talking with a friend, but like what a blessing and a curse being in your early mid 20s is because you just don't know better and you just do
Yeah.
things that you wouldn't do now. Like, but it's
Yeah,
like, well, I'm glad my brain wasn't formed enough yet to know that that was a crazy thing to do.
exactly.
Um, so okay, yeah, well, thank you for sharing that story. Wow. Let's see. I got a lot of cat calling in New York, but I guess I never had the opportunity to be mistaken for a prostitute.
You weren't in
So
the right neighborhood. If
I
you were in
wasn't in the right. That's true. I was not in the right neighborhood. Okay. So many ways that could go, but I'm gonna keep us back on track.
Yes.
Um, Ignore my inner voices. Picture books for grown-ups. I've seen a little bit on that on your Instagram.
Yeah.
The name really says it very well, but yeah,
Yes.
if you could talk about how that started, and it wasn't clear to me on the website, and this is just a me thing,
Yeah.
my way of that I do or do not comprehend things. How if all the books are written by you or if some of them are written by other people and you're just sort of curating. So I'll stop
Yeah.
talking now and you can tell us about picture books for
I
grown-ups.
wish all the books were written by me, but no, they're not.
Okay.
I've written one book. It's called The Boy on the Moon, and it's a picture book. And I came to write that because obviously my mind naturally goes to thinking about things more in depth. And I was staying at home after the birth of my second child. I was reading picture books constantly. And I was talking to, I had my newborn and my 5-year-old. So not a lot of in depth conversations happening. No offense to my children. And I just started to look at the picture books a little bit differently. I started to try to use a different lens looking at them, and it became much more meaningful. And I kind of realized at that point how much meaning you can actually put into this small form of literature, and how effective it is. You don't have to read a huge chapter book to get, an incredible, meaningful message. And so I just sort of one day thought, I have this story in my head. I'm just going to write it out. And I did. And then that became the book that I self published, The Boy on the Moon. And that book is really focused on mindfulness. It's almost like reading it is sort of like a grounding activity in itself because it really focuses on connecting with your senses, slowing down, noticing the world around you, getting curious, all the things that really just sort of define my view of the world. And so I came up with that picture book, I published it, and then I really just got into the intersection of, my two roles, which are therapist and then picture book writer. And I thought, I think a lot of adults would really benefit from this. So I started using it in therapy sessions when I started going back to private practice. And it was just incredible to see people light up and to really go back to their childhood. It really transported people back to their childhood in the most positive way, too. Asking an adult, what was your favorite picture book as a child? You can see they pause, they think about it, and it really brings them back. And then also looking at the picture books that you loved as a child, it's not just nostalgic, it also shows you how you've changed over the years. Because literature, poetry, art, it's all like a mirror, right? It
Mhm.
really, you bring your experiences and your perspective, and it really reflects back to you. So I love using it as a tool. Picture books are not the only tool I use as a therapist, obviously, but they're a lot of fun and like a lot of fun to post about and talk about and explore and analyze. So that's sort of how it came to be.
Okay, yeah, that it does seem like a very powerful therapeutic tool because of obviously how much formative things are going on in our brains and our bodies as children,
Hmm.
but then also the perspective we have as children that when we are children on the world is so different from, and yet it's always in there in you.
Hmm.
You grow up and that little child is still in there with that perspective and those experiences. So I could see how taking away some of the like verbiage, and just thinking through like that kind of primal state would be helpful. For the boy in the moon, I had two questions.
Hmm.
Um, Sort of what was the, like, inspiration, and did you do the picture part, or did you collaborate with someone on that?
So the picture part, the illustrations were done by another mom. Her son actually went to kindergarten with my daughter, and so
Oh.
we just got to chatting. And she's amazing. She's an incredible artist and so humble. Her name is Elisa, and she did all of the watercolor illustrations by hand. She did an
Wow.
amazing job. And the inspiration for the book, honestly, I think it just came from having all of these messages that I wanted to put out into the world and communicate. And it sort of just boiled over into like, I have to get the story out. And
Uh-huh.
I was laying with my son during his nap and I had my phone and I just pulled out my notes app and I wrote the whole book in there. And then
Oh,
I emailed it to my husband and he's like, oh, it gave me chills. And I was like, okay, this feels
nice.
amazing. Like, I can actually communicate my values and the things that are important to me and put it out there in the world. And the thing, nature, connecting to nature is really important to me. There's an aspect of like generational connection in there that means a lot to me. So, and I'm just in awe of the moon too. I mean, who isn't? Like, the fact that we look at the same moon that, like, Napoleon looked at or, like, the dinosaurs looked at or it's really mind-blowing if you think about it. So, that was just
Yeah.
part of, like, that sense of awe that I wanted to, like, put out there.
Right, yeah. That's such a writer thing to say. I know so many writers are like, "You look at the same moon as Napoleon." I'm like, I never would have thought of that in a million years, but, yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. So, yeah, and I imagine, when you have a profession like you do, social worker, being able to express that in a creative way and share it with a broader audience than you can share your it's a very one-to-one kind of profession that
Right.
you're doing, so I can imagine that was very thrilling to be able
Yeah.
to share it. Yeah.
Definitely. And I feel like social work, like I mentioned, it has a more of a broad perspective. It looks at the society and the culture that someone's in. And so I think my mind naturally gravitates towards kind of larger messages and looking at things more broadly.
Right. I had never thought about that social work, yeah, by necessity takes into account all the, like, other things that affect your life, not just, like, what's going on in your head.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um
I feel like I don't want to say that psychology is pathologizing, but social work is definitely less or not pathologizing in my experience.
Right, right. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Did you start Curious Hearts Press as a way as like a container for this project, or was that independent of the project, or
No, I started it as like an imprint to print the book. I thought about traditional publishing, but with traditional publishing, it usually takes years to get it out there. So I just didn't have the patience for that. So I wanted to create sort of an identity that I could use to put it out there. And I feel like curiosity and connection are the two things that my book is about, kind of my perspective as a therapist is about. So that's why I went with Curious Hearts.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And I was going through your website. How does the book club work exactly? Like, do you curate books and people read them all together, just like a normal book club, or
Yeah, wait, let me shut the door real quick. Sorry, my giant German Shepherd just butted her head in here. Left the door open.
she wanted to be on
um,
the podcast?
she did. She's here right next to me. So the book club I'm really excited about. It kind of came to life. It came to be because when I was at market selling my book, I just organically started to have these conversations with adults about their favorite books, just casual, not therapy. And it was so meaningful and so beautiful. So I thought, why don't we just bring this to life, make it organized, offer it to people? And so I'm getting it started. If anyone is interested in joining it, it's going to be virtual. I'm going to do a few sessions in Los Angeles. I haven't scheduled those yet, but we're going to start just monthly virtual. And it's going to be, yeah, we're going to pick out a book or two and you don't have to purchase it. You can go to the library. You can even not have the book and we'll just explore it together. It's very like low barrier to entry. A lot of book clubs, you have to, buy a chapter book. You have to set aside time to read the whole book and then you feel guilty if you don't. So this is like low stress for people who don't necessarily have time. They can just jump on here. We can talk about, a book that has a lot of depth and have a really meaningful conversation without a lot of preparation in advance.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, online too. Even if you couldn't get your hands on the book, you can just share it on the screen,
Yeah.
basically. So,
Yeah.
what was that process like for you of self-publishing? Was there a lot of like technology and stuff that, like when I, first learned to publish my podcast, there was a whole slew of new things I had to learn to do.
Yeah.
Like,
That's intimidating.
yeah, yeah. But self-publishing to me has always felt intimidating because I assume you do it through your site and through Amazon and you take it to market, it sounds like.
Yeah, so I've just sort of been very experimental with it in terms of how I'm selling it. But as far as publishing it, I was told that you want to publish through Ingram Sparks before you publish through Amazon, because if you go with Amazon first, Amazon sort of lays a claim to it, and then I guess there's like a hierarchy, prestige thing. I don't know, but bookstores or people don't want to purchase an Amazon book as much as if it's published elsewhere.
I
So I
see.
published Ingram first, and I don't know if that's true. That's just what I've heard.
Yeah.
So I published through Ingram, and then it got picked up by KDP, Amazon. And Ingram is basically where you can self-publish, and then that's where like libraries, bookstores can sort of buy it in bulk for
Oh.
distribution. You still have to do all of the groundwork for distribution. You have to, contact the libraries. It's a lot of work, the self-publishing process. And I will say that the quality, I was really surprised about the printing quality with Ingram Sparks and Amazon was not what I would imagine, not what I wanted necessarily. So I ended up doing offset printing, which was a
Oh.
whole world to explore because I've never printed anything in China or manufactured in China. I found like a company that's an intermediary, like Ninja Print or Print Ninja,
Uh-huh.
and they coordinated with China to do the offset printing. So I got a better quality print that is cheaper to manufacture, and then I can
Uh-huh.
sell it for, less, but I'll make more from it.
Okay.
So that's probably offset printing is probably the way to go. But then you've got the physical product that you have to move and distribute.
At first, I thought what you were doing was having people write their own picture
Ooh,
books as
that's
part
fun
of the
too. Love that idea.
So feel free to use that idea if you want. Because in my head, I'm like, maybe I could I'm not an artist, but I could, I can draw a little bit, like, and just sort of
Hmm.
sketch out like what I would think of.
Yeah.
Yeah, just accessing that. I've actually, I've done a little writing. I used back when blogs were a thing. I blogged all the
Hmm.
time, written for a few different outlets. But for me, children's writing for children was and continues to seem very intimidating for
Hmm.
me because it's like, I guess it's the way that children perceive things is so different. And when I think about the books that I loved as a child, like what was it about that book that I really enjoyed?
Hmm.
And it's not necessarily that they were talking down to me, but they were
Yeah.
talking in a different way to me than a chapter book would. So
Hmm.
I'm always impressed when someone can write a children's book that, especially one that children. Were you testing it out on your 5-year-old?
I did. I tested it out on both of my kids. My 3-year-old has a shorter attention span, so he's like, "Ah, yeah, okay, okay, I'm done."
Right.
Okay. And it
Thanks
is
a lot.
it is a bedtime book, so it's meant to be soothing, sort of
Mhm.
repetitive, calming. But my 8-year-old, who I think she was 6 or 7, no, she was 7 when it came out, she really likes it. And so
Mhm.
she's actually read it to her class, and
Oh,
yeah, it was so sweet. I think that's probably my favorite part about publishing a picture book is just seeing my kids feel proud about it, and
uh-huh.
showing, that's part of why I did is showing my daughter that you can set a goal and you can do it. Like whatever you want to do, whatever form of creativity you want to express, like just go for it. It doesn't matter what people
Right.
think or if it's a bestseller or not, really doesn't matter. It's a win just making something.
Yeah. Yeah, that I feel like that could be on a T-shirt. It's a win just making something.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially in this economic climate where it is harder and harder to make money from making things.
Yeah.
It's still a win to make the thing.
You know what's interesting though is I've seen kind of a resurgence of appreciation for
Mhm.
people that do make things. I think Gen Z is into like analog
Right.
things,
'Cause they can
which I just
hold.
became, yeah, like I just became aware of that, but they're kind of craving like a tactile experience. And I think now that AI art is becoming so common, especially in picture books and online, there's this new appreciation for flawed art. So when you were
Mhm.
saying you can draw, you can draw a little bit, I'm like, I think that would actually be really appreciated in the art world because it's clearly not AI. And I think
Right.
the fact that it's made by a human, which I guess is sort of a positive spin on, AI infiltrating the art world,
Yes.
is that there's
Yeah.
this new incredible appreciation for humans and the perspective they bring and the realness they bring to their art. So
Yeah.
embracing imperfection.
Yeah. Well, this has been a great conversation. We've hit all the topics I had. It's been really fascinating to hear your story.
Thank you.
Was there anything else you wanted to share with us or talk about on the podcast?
I would love to know a little bit more about you, actually. I know this is your podcast and I'm being interviewed, but I actually have a couple questions for you if that's okay.
Totally, totally. Yeah. I'm a Leo.
Okay.
I love talking about myself.
So, how long have you been doing this podcast?
I started it in 2017 and I was just doing it as and when. And then last summer, I was like, okay, I'm going to do once a month. I'm going to post once a month on my podcast to just get myself either talking to people or I'll occasionally create a like straight to audience episode
Hmm.
or I'll do like dramatic readings or something just to keep that part of my creative juices flowing. It's like, okay, once a month, because I listen to podcasts, obviously, and I like it
Mhm.
when there's a regular schedule and I'm like, oh, it's the first of the month. So and so must have posted a new episode,
Yeah,
or it's Monday, this podcast, so
I like that too.
yeah. So that's how long I've been doing it.
Nice. And tell me, you said you're an actor, right?
I am, yes,
I-
yeah.
Is there like a certain project you're working on right now or something that we can be aware of?
There is, yes, actually. I just shot an independent pilot for a TV show that I've been creating. It's called Witch Amiss. And I talk about being intimidated writing for children, but that show involves like tweens. They're like 10 to 12 years old. So I did write for children. I just wrote for them to say lines.
Yeah.
So yeah, we shot that in March. We're in post-production now. Just met with the editor a couple days ago. So yeah, that will go to on the festival circuit, hopefully by the end of the summer. And then when we're done with the circuit, a lot of festivals, they don't want you to post it publicly until you're done with the circuit.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're done with that, I'll figure out a place to distribute it, whether that's YouTube and or Tubi or something, some place to post it. And then if we can get the funding or we can sell it to a studio, I would like to see it have a life beyond the pilot. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's been dominating my life for the past couple of years is that project. So
That's so exciting. I have an
yeah,
8-year-old daughter and she loves the whole concept of like witchcraft and spells and potions. And when I was a kid, I loved it too. So I think
me
that's,
too. Yeah,
yeah.
I was addicted to Bewitched. I mean, I wanted to be Samantha Stevens, honestly. She was so
Didn't.
beautiful and so
Mm.
funny and clever. And I didn't want to be married to Dick York, though, although he was very funny. But yeah. And the four girls we had in it were so jazzed about it. In between takes, they'd be like, when are you going to shoot the next episode? And I'm like,
Oh.
do any of your parents have $1 million? Like, but I didn't say that, but I was like, I don't know, we'll see, and so it was really actually much more fun to work with children than I thought it would be. They were great
Oh,
actors, those little girls. So
that's
yeah.
amazing. And just a quick question. So in the show, are the girls themselves witches?
One of them is. The whole framework of the show is that one of the girls is a witch, but her parents have mysteriously disappeared, which we
Oh,
would find about later. They're alive.
okay.
But she doesn't know that she's a witch or how to control her power. She's actually in foster care right now.
Oh my God.
And then my character and my coven all come together to sort of infiltrate, go undercover, as a friend said, into her life to sort of gently lead her toward the truth about who she is and how to control her powers. So the whole pilot is us sort of situating ourselves to do that project. And in the process of that, one of the coven members' daughters, who is not a witch, finds out her mom's a witch, finds out her friend in the class is a witch,
Mhm.
and there's a whole coven thing with that. So it sounds dramatic when I describe it, but it's a lighthearted comedy in
Mm.
the vein of Bewitched or like Abbott Elementary. So
Yeah, but I like
yeah.
the themes of kind of self-discovery, self-acceptance, being different. Uh,
Yeah. And community, the way that community can come together to protect vulnerable people, like the
yeah.
power of that. So, yeah, that was a big part of that. This message was, for me, was like, community is so important
Mhm. Yeah,
to so many things, but especially to protecting the vulnerable. Yeah. So,
I love
yeah.
that.
Yeah. Thank you for asking.
Of course. Thank you so much for this conversation. I had so much fun chatting with you.
Thanks again to Bridget for being on the Sound Meets Sound podcast, and thank you, dear listeners, for joining us. If you would like to connect with Bridget, she's on Instagram at Curious Hearts Press. You can go to her website, www.picturebooksforgrownups.com. You can also email her at bridgetkleinert@gmail.com. She is currently accepting California-based teens, adults, and couples in her private practice. She also offers non-clinical reflection sessions using picture books for anyone, anywhere. The Picture Books for Grown-Ups Book Club starts August 16th. Waitlist is available and will be monthly through November. Spots are filling up fast. That's it for today. Until next time.